The year was 1985, a quiet evening filled with the hum of static from an old radio. John, a man who had lived an ordinary life in a small town, reached out and turned the dial. What came next stopped him cold. A news report was playing, but it wasn't just any news. It was a report describing his own death. The words echoed through the room, chilling and surreal. How could this be? How could the radio be telling a story about him being dead when he was sitting right there alive? John's hands trembled as he sat frozen, the radio's crackling voice narrating the details of an accident he hadn't yet experienced. The story unfolded with chilling precision: the time, the place, the cause. Each fact seemed impossibly accurate, as if the news was coming from a future no one else knew. The room grew colder, the shadows longer, and the line between reality and nightmare blurred. This was no ordinary night, and John's life was about to be caught in a web of mystery and fear. Was this some kind of dark prediction, a cruel joke, or something far more sinister? The tension in the air was thick, and questions flooded his mind. Could hearing his own death on the radio change fate? Was it a warning or a trap? And most importantly, could he escape the future the radio predicted? In the quiet town, where everyone knew each other's stories, John was suddenly the center of a terrifying enigma. The ordinary life he had taken for granted now felt fragile, like a glass about to shatter. Every tick of the clock seemed to echo the ominous news from the radio. Friends and family unaware of the chilling broadcast, while John wrestled with the impossible truth playing out in static waves. As the news report faded, silence filled the room, but the questions didn't stop. Was it just a hallucination, a trick of the mind? Or was something far beyond human understanding unfolding? John stared at the radio, his heart pounding, waiting for what would come next. And for the first time, he wondered if the future could be changed at all. John couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that gripped him long after the radio fell silent. The room was still, but his mind was racing with questions and fears that wouldn't let him rest. Who would report such a thing? Why was the news so detailed about his death? And most terrifyingly, was it inevitable? John wasn't a man with many secrets. He worked at the local hardware store, was known for his kindness, and had spent his life quietly building a future with his wife, Ellen. They had dreams of growing old together, raising a family, and living peacefully in their tight-knit community. But now all of that seemed to hang by a thread, fragile and uncertain. The radio incident wasn't the first strange event John had experienced lately. Over the past few weeks, he had noticed odd things: phone calls with no one on the other end, fleeting shadows outside his window at night, and a creeping sense that someone was watching him. At first, he tried to brush it off as stress or imagination, but hearing his own death reported was impossible to ignore. Ellen tried to comfort him, but even she was shaken by his sudden obsession with the radio broadcast. Maybe it was just a coincidence, she said gently, trying to ease the tension that now filled their home. But John couldn't accept that. The details were too precise, the timing too cruel. As he replayed the news report in his head, the story became clearer. It spoke of a car accident on a rainy night, the exact location just a few miles from their house. A tragedy that hadn't happened yet, but was now haunting his every thought. John's days grew restless, his nights restless, as if caught in a nightmare that refused to end. He began to question everything: his memories, his future, even his sanity. Was this some kind of warning from beyond? Or a cruel twist of fate he couldn't escape? The fear of the unknown settled deep inside him, and the idea that the future might be written and unchangeable pressed heavily on his soul. With each passing day, John's world shrank, narrowed down to the ticking clock and the shadow of that haunting radio broadcast. The quiet town around him remained oblivious, living life as usual, unaware of the growing storm inside one man's heart. But beneath the surface, the mystery deepened. Was there someone behind the broadcast? Someone who wanted John to know his fate? Or was this a message from time itself? A puzzle with no answer? John knew one thing for sure. He couldn't turn the radio off anymore. Not after hearing what he did. Because now, every moment felt like a countdown, every decision a step closer to an unknown end. John's world was unraveling faster than he could keep track. The radio's chilling broadcast was just the beginning. Shadows from his past and unexpected forces started creeping in, turning his quiet life into a battlefield of fear and doubt. Ellen noticed the change first. The man she had always known was slipping away, replaced by someone haunted, restless. His eyes held a weight she couldn't reach, and conversations often ended with silence or averted gazes. She loved him fiercely, but the fear creeping into their home was contagious. Sometimes she wondered if John was slipping into despair, or if there was something more dangerous lurking beneath. Then there was Mark, John's longtime friend and coworker. Mark had always been skeptical, the practical voice in the room. When John told him about the radio broadcast, Mark's first reaction was disbelief, even mockery. "You've been working too hard," he said, trying to shake off the tension. But as days passed and John's anxiety deepened, Mark started to question if maybe there was something he couldn't explain. John himself wrestled with guilt and frustration. He had always prided himself on being rational, a man grounded in facts. Now, this impossible prediction challenged everything he believed. If the radio foretold his death, did that mean he was powerless? Could he change what was written? Or was fate a cruel, unyielding force? Meanwhile, strange things continued happening around town. A series of unexplained power outages coincided with the nights John felt the most vulnerable. Local rumors began swirling about a curse or something supernatural, but John tried to focus on facts, even as his reality blurred. A new subplot emerged when John received an anonymous note slipped under his door. Not all futures are set, but some secrets come with a price. The handwriting was shaky, unfamiliar. Was it a warning? A threat? Or a clue? This mysterious message opened a new layer to the mystery. Perhaps someone knew more about the broadcast or the fate John faced. It raised the stakes immensely. John had to decide whether to seek out the sender or bury the message, afraid of what might come next. The moral dilemmas gnawed at him. Could he warn others, or would that make things worse? Should he isolate himself to protect Ellen and their community, or ask for help and risk exposing a nightmare no one was ready to face? Each choice felt like a trap, each path lined with uncertainty. At the same time, the tension between John and Mark grew. Mark's skepticism clashed with John's desperation, creating friction that threatened their friendship. Was Mark just afraid, or did he sense something dark creeping closer too? Every unanswered question and every strange event pulled John deeper into a maze without a clear exit. The air was thick with suspense, and viewers are left wondering, was the radio's message a curse, a warning, or a glimpse into a future John might still rewrite? And who was behind the anonymous note? Nothing was as simple as it seemed, and the night held more secrets waiting to be uncovered. John's battle had only just begun, with time ticking and shadows growing longer. Days blurred into restless nights. John felt the weight of the unknown pressing down harder with every passing moment. The anonymous note burned in his pocket, a constant reminder that someone was watching, waiting, or maybe warning. His mind raced. Who had sent it? What price would he pay for digging deeper? At home, the silence between John and Ellen grew unbearable. Their conversations were clipped, full of half-truths and lingering fears. Ellen wanted to believe this was just a nightmare John could wake from. But when he jumped at every sound, when his eyes darted to the dark corners of the room, she knew something darker was unfolding. Mark's visits became less frequent. Their once solid friendship cracked under the strain of distrust. John needed him, but Mark's cold skepticism felt like a wall, leaving John isolated and desperate. Then, late one evening, the power cut out again. The house plunged into darkness. John fumbled for the radio, his hands trembling. Static hissed from the speaker, then a faint, distorted voice. It wasn't the usual broadcast. It was a whisper, a warning. "They're closer than you think." John froze. The hair on his arm stood up. The message wasn't just about him anymore. It was bigger, more dangerous. Outside, a shadow moved, quick, deliberate. John's breath caught. He reached for the door, but Ellen grabbed his arm. "Wait," she whispered. Fear thick in the air. Questions exploded inside his head. Who was they? And why was John suddenly the target of something sinister beyond his understanding? He felt trapped between what he knew and what he feared. In the days that followed, John found strange signs. A scratched symbol etched into the bark of a tree near their home. A voicemail with nothing but heavy breathing. A locked drawer in his own house suddenly left open. Each clue tightened the noose, pushing him toward a truth he wasn't ready to face. His dreams turned restless, filled with flashes of the accident described in the radio report. Rain-soaked streets, screeching tires, the blinding flash of headlights. Was it fate, or a nightmare trying to warn him? Every moment ticked closer to an unknown deadline. John's world was collapsing, and the question that haunted him louder than ever was, could he outrun death, or was it already waiting in the shadows? The tension had reached a breaking point. Secrets almost spilled in whispered conversations. Every glance, every silence screamed of something about to explode. And then, just when hope seemed to flicker, John received a phone call. The voice was unfamiliar, low and urgent. Stop looking for answers, or you won't like what you find. The line went dead. John stared at the receiver, heart pounding. What would he do next? John's heart pounded as he stared at the dead phone line. The warning was clear, but from whom? Suddenly, the pieces began to shift in his mind, twisting everything he thought he knew. Days earlier, a small detail had slipped past him. Mark's sudden absence after their last heated argument. John had always trusted Mark, but now suspicion gnawed at him. What if Mark wasn't just a skeptical friend, but someone involved in this mystery? Had Mark sent the note, or was either they lurking in the shadows? Determined to confront the truth, John decided to visit Mark's house, a place that until now had felt safe. But when he arrived, the front door was ajar. Inside, the room was in disarray, papers scattered, furniture overturned. A single clue caught John's eye, a torn photo on the floor showing John, Ellen, and Mark together, but someone had scribbled over Mark's face. John's stomach twisted. Was Mark hiding something darker than skepticism? Or is he in danger too? As John searched for answers, Ellen uncovered a shocking secret of her own. She found old letters hidden in their attic, letters from a stranger warning about a dangerous cycle tied to the radio broadcasts. The letters hinted at a shadowy group that manipulated futures through these eerie transmissions. The group's goal was unclear, but their reach was vast and ruthless. Caught between two mysteries, Mark's disappearance and the secret society's involvement, John and Ellen's trust in each other was tested like never before. Ellen urged caution, fearing the consequences of digging too deep. But John's desperation to rewrite his fate pushed him onward. In a tense parallel, Mark was shown elsewhere, locked in a dim room, grappling with his own demons. He wasn't the villain, but a reluctant player forced into silence by the very forces John feared. His only hope was that John wouldn't give up, that the truth would set them both free. The story's tension skyrocketed as John realized the betrayal wasn't just about friendship, it was about survival. Every choice mattered. Every secret held life or death stakes. The clock was ticking, the accident was drawing nearer, and the shadowy group was closing in. Could John outsmart them? Could trust be rebuilt? Or was the future sealed? No matter what he did, the questions hung in the air, heavier than ever. The night was thick with tension as John stood face to face with the shadowy group that had haunted his every step. The truth, long buried beneath fear and silence, finally surfaced. The radio broadcast wasn't just a prediction. It was a weapon, a tool used by this secret society to control fate, to rewrite lives for their own gain. Mark appeared, bruised but resolute, breaking free from his silence. He confessed how he'd been forced to play a part, torn between protecting John and keeping his own family safe from the group's ruthless reach. The betrayal wasn't born of malice, but of desperate survival. John's heart ached with conflicting emotions: anger, relief, sorrow. Ellen stood close, her strength unwavering, reminding him that even in the darkest moments, hope could still burn bright. Together, they confronted the group, using the very broadcast to turn the tables. John manipulated the radio signal, sending a message that exposed the society's secrets to the world. The power of their control began to crumble as whispers turned into public outrage. But just when victory seemed within reach, the final twist struck. As John and Ellen left their home, believing the nightmare over, the radio crackled once more. A new report began, not about John's death, but someone else's. Someone close. John froze, realization dawning. The fight wasn't over. The future was still uncertain, and the shadows remained. The dust had finally settled, but the echoes of what John and Ellen had faced lingered in the quiet moments that followed. The secret society's power had been exposed, its grip weakened by the broadcast John had sent out. Mark was free, returning from the shadows with scars that ran deeper than the visible bruises. Their friendship, once fractured by fear and betrayal, began to heal, stronger now for the truths shared and battles fought. John sat beside Ellen in the soft morning light filtering through their window. The radio sat silent, its eerie broadcasts replaced by peaceful silence. The nightmare that had consumed their lives had loosened, but its lessons remained. John thought back to the chilling moment when he first heard his own death announced, a moment that shattered his world and forced him to question fate itself. It wasn't just about escaping death, but reclaiming agency in a world that often felt out of control. Ellen's quiet strength had been his anchor. She reminded him that love and hope could defy even the darkest predictions. Together, they had faced the unknown, and though the future was still uncertain, they had learned to live with its mysteries rather than fear them. The strange signals, the anonymous notes, the whispered warnings, they had all been part of a larger truth. The future wasn't fixed. It was shaped by choices, courage, and connection. The radio's haunting message was a reminder to listen carefully to the voices around us, and to trust in the power of our own actions. As John reflected, a final broadcast crackled softly from the radio, a simple message this time. Every voice matters. Every story counts. It wasn't a prediction or a threat, but a call to remember that even in darkness, there is light to be found. Their story was one of survival, but also of awakening. A reminder that sometimes the greatest mysteries are not in what we cannot change, but in what we dare to face. If John's journey teaches us anything, it's that the future is not just something that happens to us. It's something we create. And sometimes, all it takes is the courage to turn the dial and listen. Back and index pointing right, like, share, and subscribe if you believe stories like this need to be told. Not for views, but for hope. Every voice matters. Every story deserves to be heard.